Hello and welcome back to the show. Today we're going to continue what I did last week, and that is serialization of our dice in the dice app. And this is for when the app closes or whenever, and let's get right into it and show what we did last week. We have the app. I'm going to switch to compact mode here, and we implement these two buttons, save and load, and they're not really the nicest buttons. We're going to make this automated at some point, so we want to get rid of these buttons. That's our show today. But what we've done is, you notice it's actually loaded the values, and it's hard to see a bit because it automatically loaded. But if I press load again, nothing should change. But if I go and change something and then press load, you'll notice it goes back. It at least shows it loads, but this is obviously not the intent of these load and save, as this should all be automated, so you don't have to actually do this automatically or manually. And that's what we want to focus on today is, well, when do I know to call load and save? Because we have a mobile app, people expect that when you just go and you modify something, so I go and modify the die, and it's done, they expect when they come back here that it's automatically saved. They don't expect that when it's loaded, it goes back to the old one. So we have to find the points where we say, when are we going to save this? How do we save this automatically? And now we're going to start looking at that today, and let me look at the code we had last time. So we have the main view, and this is where we show the listings, but mainly we're interested in the state, and we have in the main state we had these save functions, save data, and this kicked off our save, and each of the items had saving on it. So where was that? We had a get serial object function. This is responsible for writing the JSON data for each of the items, and then a load object which does reverse. And we covered that in last episode if you want to look at that some more. And today what we're really interested in looking at is, well, when do we know to call the save data and load data functions? As when do we call save data? Load data is actually really easy, and we already have that. Load data is called in our constructor. And this means anytime the app reloads, it's going to call load. And this is correct. So we don't really need to have that there. And so let's look at when we call save data. So save data, and let's look at what we have in the view right now. We have this little debug view. And where did I put the debug view? Right here at the top. We have this little debug panel, and it's called save data. And so all we have to do is automate the call to save data, to know when it's actually time to save. And this becomes the tricky part in the UI. When do we want to save data? How do we know that the user's modified something, they want to change it? There are a couple ways to do this. Let me talk about the way I'm not going to do first this time, and I'll explain why that is. We have these individual items, not the static item, but we have item, and you could actually intercept on here when something has changed. I don't, some syntax like this, name, comma, value. I don't remember what it is. I'm going to have to look this up. The reason I don't know and I didn't look is because this isn't the approach I want to take. What this would do is that every time something in our structure changes, we get this function called, and then we can intercept it. Now, this is an approach in some cases, but it has a slight overload. So what if I know that one of these items has changed? I still have to propagate it back up to the item, and I might have to do this anyways. But if the user changes it a lot, we don't actually want to keep changing. We don't want to keep changing the value every time they press something. You don't want to issue 100 save commands, or if this is going over the web, you don't want to issue 100 web requests when they've only modified it once. So this is not the approach I'm going to take now. In a future episode, what I do is I might come back and I might say, well, why would I use this approach? And this, if we do take that approach, we have to really worry about the chain and queuing up requests. So let's take the other approach first. What else do we know? Well, we have these items, and we have this edit panel that's open. And this edit panel is attached to an item set. It's called this.editing. And we know when this is closed because we have something called close edit. Everything that closes panel calls close edit. Now this actually seems like a reasonable point to say, you know what, there's a good chance the user changed something, so let's save it again. So they changed something, and whether they press close or whether they open another panel or whether they did this, we can see what they changed. And it's not the perfect point to save it, but it is one point. And let's start with that. Let's try to make that saving there automatic. So this .editing, but we have the exact same problem I mentioned. The other one is that item set itself, it doesn't know how to save. It's not the high level item, it's the lower level item. So we have we have a couple options here. Either we can tell the parent about the saving, or we can split these off into individual files and save each file on its own. But given the size of our data, I don't think I'm going to do that this time. I'm just going to send a message up saying, look, something's changed. Can you please save again? Can you please save again? Now, how might we want to do that? We can either use UX to propagate the event, or we can make our own event, or we can give the event item set its own sort of signaling message up to the set there. Or we can create a new module saying when a request to save has to be there. And this is perhaps, there's so many options here, it's really tough to say, and it's really hard for the best practice. So let's just sort of pick one and go with it. Let's pick the one that the item sets know about their parents, so they know about main state. Or that may not be the best way. Let's create, I'm trying to think of how we do that, a singleton that saves it. Let's create a global, because we're really going to have a global state. So we're going to have a global. Okay, so we're going to say global, and we'll just say serializer. And it's just going to be undefined at first. Now this isn't the best way to set this up. I'll set it up in a second. And so when we have this item closed, we're going to say serializer.save. We're just going to call a save function and let it save on there. And let it deal. We can add more details as time goes on. And then when this main state is created, I'm going to do this slightly horrible thing and say serializer equals this. So whenever this is created, we become the serializer, and that means we need to have a save function, which we already have, don't we? Or what do you call it? Save. We have a save data function. We have save data down here. And save data will be internal, but let's just call it save now. Let's just call it save. Okay, now our console is complaining about some stuff. Serialized is not defined, that's fine. Serializer. That must have been the old reference. Okay. Now when we're in this view, we can look at the log output, the log here as well. It's also starting the console, I can see in two places. If I change something, if I close this, cannot read under properties save. Okay, so it didn't get my serializer. Okay, why is that? Serializer. What's it complaining about now? Serial. Oh yeah, I spelled that wrong here as well. Wonderful. Okay. So if we open it and we close it, you notice it's called save down here. I know it's really small, and I can't really magnify it, but it's also on the console log here, saving. And this is going to happen every time I open and close this. It's a bit inefficient, but what's good about it is that when I close it, when I click load, it has the right data now. And this means we could actually get rid of the load function as well. And now if we go to like preview and reify this, we refresh the thing as well, we get the same thing. Reify should be doing the, does it do the load as well? Refresh. It's not doing it. So let's create a viewport. I got to see which part of these options actually reforces it to create a new view. And this will also call load, just to prove that we've actually updated the data file. And if that works, we can hide the panel. Okay, there we go. And if you notice, it was briefly empty, and that makes sense, because at first, when it first starts up, we haven't loaded the data. And this is really just a tiny, minimal, probably 1 frame startup delay. and creating this. And so now it's saved it. We can see it's loading in the background. And so we don't need this panel now because we know what it saves. It saves every time we do this. Okay. And this serialization, this is pretty much all we need. There is another point where you want to do this, is that what if the user has this open? Now this is one of those really weird cases. What if they have it open and they close the app? We have a really simple editor here. We're editing the color. If they lost their color change, the user probably wouldn't even notice. But what if there was a form here and there's several bits of fields? We'd also want to save when the user leaves the app. We want to force a save then, say, look, if the app's about to close, we better save it then too. And so this one here is really kind of a backup. And so let's work on the main one set. So let's get rid of this load view here. You can hide the debug panel first of all. We don't need this anymore. Should be gone. And now we want to say, well, how do I know when the app's about to close? And for that we have a lifecycle model. And I've never used this API before. I know it's here. Let's find out. And I don't know if it works in preview, to be honest. This is where the funny part is. So lifecycle model JS. And lifecycle on, entering, exiting, entering background. Oh, these sound like fine places. Exited interactive, entering background. What do those mean? What is the difference between background and... Actually, let's do exiting interactive. And we'll do exactly as they say here. Okay, all this confirms for me that this won't work in preview, which means it's good we did the other one first, it'll save, but let's put this in for completeness just in case somebody's looking at this example, because I'll keep polishing it up. And now the question is, where do we put this? Well, let's put this at the top. Oh, I pressed the wrong button, as I often do. So we have lifecycle. Now we have the serializer. Let's put it right beside the serializer. It says lifecycle. Oops. Dot on. Entering background. Oh no, we said entering exited interactive. Now what I don't know is that will exited interactive be called on entering background? That is, if somebody goes entering background, will they both be called? I don't know. Maybe that's an interesting question. Let's just deal with this one first. I can test this on the device later and tell you, come back and say, hey, look, we actually need to know this or not. And what does this call in that case? Oh, it's a JS6 function, just because they're more fun. And then we're going to go serializer.save. What if there is no serializer? So let's be serious here, serializer. Yeah, if serializer. I think that works in JavaScript, as long as it's not. And there's no way to see this from preview, so I'm sorry, I can't show you whether this actually works or not. But it would on a device. The idea is that on a device, when the user goes and closes this, I have some sort of error here though. Lifecycle. Is that an actual error, or was it one I made before it saved it fully? I think that was a temporary error and I have saved it. Yes, so all this, I understand that exiting interactive happens whenever you're obscured or something like that. The question is, does it happen also when you go to the background? That is, if my app gets entering background, does it automatically get an exited interactive as well? Because that would also be that. Or do I have to actually handle both events? And for me, we don't have exited. It says here exited interactive. So that's my question is, okay, so are you saying that the example is actually wrong? The event name is called exiting interactive? No, it says exited, not exiting. And so that's what I don't know. I don't know if we have to have 2 here. For safety, let's just add the second one. I don't know for sure. We can do the same one. We can do lifecycle. I can actually copy this. We're doing the exact same thing. And we're doing entering background. This is something I'd like to actually confirm whether we're actually doing the same thing or not. Now this, if they are, the issue here is that if exiting and entering background also calls this, is we're very quickly in succession going to call save twice. For the size of data our app has, this is not likely going to be an issue. Yes. Great, so all this also needs to test it. You'd access. So for the thing we have, for the data we have, this would also, we don't really need to, we don't need to save it twice. We don't need to do it twice. So let's say we don't know. Or let's say, as very often is the case, that Android calls both of them, iOS calls one. I mean, we try to abstract away from this, but sometimes it doesn't happen. Or I'm trying to think of what else we can do. Is that you may want to put a timeout on this stuff. You may want to say, look, let's save it in a second. Except for entering background, I don't think you can have a timeout. Will our JS stop exiting when it goes into the background? Alright, I'm actually not sure. But okay, so let's just leave it at this. We have exit interactive, and this will save it. So when we leave it on the app, on the phone, if we go into a phone call, we exit the app, we force it to close, it gives us a chance to actually save this data. Otherwise, while the app is running, every time you close this panel, it'll save the data. And this actually covers everything in our app. There's nothing else that we can actually close here. And so in terms of serialization, we've pretty much got it covered for this very simple app. And what I say would be more advanced now is that these items are really simple. And they're small enough to save in the one file. If you remember, the file is really tiny. And where's it over here? So this is our full data file for that. This is a tiny file. In terms of JSON serialized data, it's small. So it's not really a big issue to save it again and again and again every time the user goes up and down. This is a local disk as well. So it's not like we're doing a network transaction. But the issue comes here, well, what if I am sending this over to network? Then you have to build a timeout system. Then you have to build a system that says, okay, look, I'm actually currently sending it off to a remote server. Maybe I shouldn't do it again. Or I've just saved this, or nothing's actually changed. Or I'm going to update individual items. And this is something maybe we can look at, but it's something I'd actually prefer to do some offline work on first, because this starts getting really tricky, especially for the server side. And I'd have to make another model. If you're interested, we could do it, or I could start doing it next time, or we take a break on it first. But otherwise, what I'd look at today, if there's no questions about serialization, what I can look at is the one thing that's bugging me is that we created this new set function. See, new set, new set, new set. But we have no way to get rid of it now. We have no way to get rid of these new items. And so this is one of those typical approaches. Well, I thought about it. Well, this is the typical approach in mobile where you'd swipe to the left and you'd have a delete option. So let's actually implement that. Let's see if we can implement the swipe to the left delete option. And we'll just call this part of serialization, because the moment you serialize data, and you're going to find this in your own debugging, you actually have to have a way to actually fully edit your data. Otherwise, you're stuck with this where it keeps reloading and you can't get rid of it. Okay, so we want to go into the item states again. Where is that? Dice set. And this dock panel now that has these little bits. Or is it a stack panel? Why on earth is that a stack panel? Oh, it's a stack panel because we put that stuff in the bottom of it. So that's stacked up. So now we're going to make this a... Oh, what is it called again? An active... Gee, I forgot the name. I can search for it. Swiped. A swipe panel. So while swiped, or while swipe active, was it? While swipe active. I don't remember, swipe gesture. Swipe gesture is the name I'm looking for. This one right here. All right, we're going to make these swipe gestures on these panels. So let's add a swipe gesture. Swipe gesture. And direction equals left, as devices tend to have it. And length equals, how much should this cover? Length element in this case equals this. We're going to swipe the entire thing. That should be fine, yeah. And type equals active. It's going to have two states. The example says simple, and I'll tell you what active is in a moment. And I'm going to give this one a name, while name equals, we'll just call it primary, while swipe active. And this is about the primary one, while swipe active. This swipe is not going to be in this. Move target equals primary. X equals 1. Relative to equals, let's say options panel. Sorry, relative to size relative node equals options panel. And I can explain it again. These are just setting it up. Once you can see it, it's easier to explain it. So let me just finish this off here, and then we can try to explain it. Length element equals options panel. And I'll stick this near the top here first so we can see what it is. Panel UX name equals options panel. Alignment equals right. Anchor equals 0%, 50%. And we only have one button, so I'm going to do this. I'm just going to make this one button red. I'm going to completely ignore my color palettes for now. Padding equals 10. Delete. Now let's see if that worked, or it made some syntax errors, I often do. Oh, something failed. Source, yeah, okay. This needs a name. Swipe left. Okay, so all this confirms that back to the main state, that entering background, exiting interactive is called first, so we probably don't need this. Probably don't need this. Exit interactive should be called. I'm going to do this wonderful extrapolation thing where it says because we've tested it on Android, we're going to assume it works on iOS, which in general is not a good idea, except, I mean, we have this abstraction framework. There's a good chance that whoever programmed it, or hopefully they tested it and they made the behavior consistent. And it's not necessarily true because we may have not, these have different purposes, but let's just go with that. And now let me go back to the dice set, to the panel, to the swiping. Okay, length elements. While swiped out. I forgot that again here. While swiped out. That's what a source equals swipe left. Element. Length node, probably. They were called elements. All this is going to go from iOS for us. Okay, this length element was probably called length element at some point. Options panels. I changed the names a long time. Okay, let's see if this worked. All right, you can already see there's something stuck over here on the right. Great, huh? Okay. Okay, now this is the first thing here. This is supposed to be a swiping animation because it's not just about true and false. It's we want to swipe the whole way, and this is a swiping animation. And we want to move the negative side of this. Negative. Except this shouldn't be move. This should just be a move. We're going to move the whole panel over. Because it has to move the thing in the background. And this whole panel has to have a way to hit it now. Hit test mode. Because only the children will be... Because you notice I had a hard time dragging that, and that's because the default emptiness is not draggable. But now we have, okay. So now you can see the delete coming and going, except we have the issue that it's, well, it's always there. So what do we want to do with this? How do we want to deal with this? There are two styles in mobile devices. You can either make the delete slide in, or you can make it be revealed. And in this case, because we have a padding around here, it's actually easier to make it be revealed. In that, we give this stack panel a color, and we stick this one in the background. And then again, we don't move the whole panel. We're going to go back to moving just the target primary one. And it got mad at me for something. Not Z index, Z offset. Okay, just a second. Oh, okay. Now I have to change the anchor again. Let's just take off the anchor, because the anchor by default will have it in the right position. Now we see no delete, and when I slide over, I get delete. Okay. So that'll give us our delete option. And it's the revealing mode, as opposed to this sliding out. It is the revealing mode. And if you want to do the other mode, there are several ways to do it. You could also make this fade in instead. There's many different options. Sliding, I find, is a little bit weird when you don't have any color against slide, right? Because I'm sliding, but if you can see it sliding, I just find it disconcerting when it's white against white. But okay, it works. And back to what Ola says over here in the chat, he confirmed that that we don't need this. Exit actor should be called confirmed on iOS and Android. So those are the two targets we support. I'm assuming this is the way it's defined. So exit interactive for the lifecycle saving. This will be called whenever you get out of the app somehow. But again, we have the other save method, and it's good to always have another save method. Don't rely on these things, because some mobiles do weird things. Like, you never know if the user... For example, you can't have lifecycle on user took battery out. That's not going to happen. The battery's just going to run out. The battery's just going to die on you. They drop the phone, or they turn it off, or something else forcibly killed it. There are many ways that things could go badly. So it's good to have another save, but this is sort of the same one, saying like, this is a clean point, we saved it. Good, we're in a good known state. Okay. Now, that diversion there. Thank you, Olis, for looking that up for us. So we have both Android and iOS confirmed. And now we'll go back to deleting these things. Now we have our swipe to reveal pattern here. We can swipe any of them. And we're going to make that delete button do something now. And the delete button is... This is where things get kind of fun with data. How can you delete yourself? We have an item set here. But the item set function, which is in main, where is this now? State. We have this item set. The item set on, you can't actually delete an item from itself, because there's nothing here to delete it from. Alright, now I'm going to sidetrack just a second, because this is technically a serialization app, so I'm going to respond to Olis's comment. If you were to implement exit and back button in Android, you would obviously need to call saving there too, because exit interactive wouldn't get called for a dying app. Really? It's not called? Alright, so we're going to have to get back to that. We're going to have to get the back button thing. And that has to do with the router. Okay, it's going to be a bit more to implement. I think I'll implement that one offline and then bring that back up at another point, and I'll update this example. I'll keep these examples a little bit updated, even if I do stuff offline, just so that somebody's looking at them. It's not sort of like a dead little project. I'm going to keep them updated as I find out new best practices. And I'll go and check that back button, because back button is something that requires navigation, and we don't have any navigation in this app. But there is something I want to add navigation for, so when I get there I can actually do that one as well. Okay. Now, so back here, what is it saying? I was saying we have this slide and we have this delete, and the question is, well, where do we call delete now? The item set can't delete itself. So we're going to introduce a user event. We're going to do user event here, and I'm going to say clicked. What happens on clicked? That's what we have to decide. Let's give this panel a user event. And UX name equals deleted. Technically not deleted, let's say request delete. I like to be picky on these names just in case you actually have a deleted event. Request delete's not technically the same. And so now we're going to do raise user event. Event equals request delete. And we might just make it show it so something before we have it factor equals 0.5. Duration equals 0.3. Let's just show that that works first. So now when I go and I want to make sure it compiles event name. Let's try event name. There is an event, I just maybe on my wrench, so okay. So we actually call it. And now we need something that responds to it, and this will be the main view. The main view is where we have the sets. And so here we're going to have on user event, event name equals request delete, handler equals delete set. And let's go into our main state. And somewhere we have a new function. We have a new add new set, so let's add this here, delete set. And this has some args. This.itemSets. I love the color remove function. We're going to do it JavaScript way. Splice. Actually, we have to get the index of it first. This.itemSets.index of args.data. Which one do we want to remove? Splice at index 1, not replace anything. I'm sorry, I have to laugh because I look at this and I'm just okay, your JavaScript, I know it's a very low level sort of language here. Not low level, but it's sort of incomplete. This to me, nothing here says remove, so it's like it's just not clear what that does. Okay, unexpected token. What? What's it complaining about now? That's weird. What's it complaining about here? What did we change? Did anything change? Huh. Well, what changed there? Exited interactive, lifecycle on. I'm not sure what syntax error I got. Let's backtrack a bit in this file. Copy this first, and then I'm going to backtrack. Something weird happened to that file. That was working, wasn't it? What is going on? Why is this not working? I don't like this at all. Still hates it. Okay, I'm going to rebuild this. Something's gone wrong here. Okay. Temporary, whatever it was, add new set. Let's add our code back in. Whoa. Wow, that error is totally misplaced. Okay, but before I get, I'm going to add the comment. In case of entering background. Now I had to figure out why this function is totally screwing it up. Delete set, args. What on earth is wrong with this function? Why is this causing it to do wacky things? It's in like totally the wrong location. And I know we still need to get our file mapping done. But that must be squishing it all into one line. What is wrong here? This.itemsets.splice. So if I comment this out, oops, then it's happy. Of course, it doesn't have a delete item sets. If I comment it back in, then he gets mad. That kind of sucks. What is wrong here? Index of args.data. Which part of this is causing it to fail? I'm really having a hard time figuring out what's the problem here. I'm going to clear this and save it again. Okay, I'm going crazy here, I think. Well, let's try what all this suggests. But why, if I remove the delete function, is it compiling? Alright. So I had some weird editing. Thank you all this. It's on that line, but it was coming back and forth based on that delete function. Ugh. Crazy. Whatever. Let's get rid of that. And now let's see if the delete actually works. No. Okay. Let's see if delete's being called. F delete set console.log deleting. Let's see if this is ever called. No, it's not called. So what do we have a problem? Dice set emits the event, raise user event, and it's scaling, so we know it's being exited. Request delete. And main view has an on user event. Aha! It's a log. I'll switch to log. I know it's not in the log. That was something else. That's my loading. I don't actually get this. This is actually kind of when you have actual debug messages. Those little red circles, they kind of make it look like something's wrong even though something's not. Okay, so on user event is defined in dice set, and this makes sense. It's local to dice set, so nothing's going to happen out there. So now if I move this, okay, trust me, it deleted. We just have a whole bunch of the exact same items. So watch, if I delete this one, ugh, that's weird. Something went wrong there. I think we've seen this everywhere. I think I actually have a defect about that, a defect report. Okay. Why is it now not deleting? Something weird here. Whew. Okay, I think we might have hit a defect here. Let's make sure the splice is doing the right thing first, not before I start complaining about my code. Is deleting. Oops, I had the wrong code. Console.log index. Let's see what we're actually deleting. split this out. So if I do this, I'm expecting a deleting 2 here. That works fine. And one of them actually went away. What about the next one? What was it actually deleting now? Deleting 3. Was that the right item to delete? Okay. Second point, when we delete something, we should probably be calling save data here as well. Save. Or what do I call it? I just call it save. So that when I reify, I've at least lost the 1. So it's going to delete. We're going to get the same error again. Get the error. We don't know what this is. This is an internal. This is a very internal error, and this is I think in the preview or wait. No, this is coming from model. Okay, I'm gonna have to blame model there. I just try to figure out which of my colleagues to blame. I mean, yeah, it could very well still be me because it's inside an each, and that's mainly my stuff. But I'm gonna find out. It looks like it's inside the model.js file, which is the diffing. So there's something wrong with the diffing. But now at least we've deleted them. So this looks like the fact that we've deleted them, except now that one doesn't delete. We have some sort of issue here with the updating. So okay, so I think we found a defect in the model system, that something with the deletion isn't working. Because this should clearly be deleting here. Splice deletes, it's saving the correct set. And then and you notice I save it there, it reloads, and it's definitely gone. So if I add a few more, and I reify this, refresh it, that doesn't necessarily call a new one, so if we do an actual restart the viewport, that'll force it to do a reload. Forgot to save something. Alright, this is the problem, as we said on the preview, and I'm actually going to enter a defect for this because these main state here, these lifecycles should definitely work in preview. I mean, because if we're closing the thing, why do we not enter exit interactive? It would make it a lot. So we're just going to fake it here. We're going to open and close that, which forces a save, and then we'll restart the viewport, and then we at least saved it. Okay, so now when we delete them, one goes away, second one crashes, but at least if we restart, at least they're gone. So this is a very good confirmation. I don't think we've done anything wrong on the JavaScript side, that this is probably the model and it's different now, having done something wrong. And I'll file a defect and we'll get a fix in for that. But at least we have a way to delete sets now. That's the main thing. With deleting sets is okay. And we do that with wherever that delete function is. With delete set. And how I did that was, because again, the problem is here inside this panel, when I have this delete option here. And this should really be even more red. This is like more red. Let's get more red. There we go. Even more red. Is this too red? Just make it totally red. Why not? Align the text to the center. This is again what I mean. It's a little bit disconcerting to have this panel here when the top thing on top doesn't differentiate color from the background. Maybe I should give the background a different color and make these spaces different. Well, I'll forget about that. I can work on that little design bit offline. Okay, anyways, what we did is we made this a swipe gesture on the item set. So each item set can be swiped, And when we click delete, assuming that we didn't have this error, we're raising the user event called request delete. And this is what the panel says. Look, I want to be deleted, but because I'm the view for this item set, I obviously don't know how to delete myself. I'm in a list somewhere, and that list has to go and remove it. It has to, and so that's why we put in the main view on the dice set, we said, okay, when we get this user event, at this point in the main state, in the main application, we know how to handle it. We can say delete set. Good, we can delete that. And we call it delete set, which is a JavaScript function. The alternate way to do this, and it makes sense in some cases, but not always, is that our item set function, our item set class, takes the main state as a parameter, and then it can handle delete directly, but all it's going to do is call the main state called delete. And this is, I prefer the event system, because to me, when objects call up to their parents saying they want to be deleted, it feels a little bit weird, because it's not the object that wants deletion, it's the user that wants it. It's a UI level thing. It's the UI saying, hey, the user requested this deletion, and so it shouldn't happen at the lower level here. And so that's one way to do it. And so now we have the delete, and it's a swipe view, so you can swipe it in and out, and they can all have delete. And so that, I think, what this does is, so we can also create a new, oh no, new sets are going to go weird, so let's refresh this all. Because we delete something's going to go weird now. Right, now it went weird. Okay, now we've got the state screwed up somehow. So I'm going to have to, restart the viewport. This will clear out the state. And I'll have to get my colleague looking at that one as to what happened here. I got to go through and find a reduced use case. This looks more stable now. So when I click on this, I can modify it. We know this is going to save. We can add more items. Let's add a new one. Okay. Close that. So we know that's saved every time. You can see the little save logs going here. And we can add new sets, and we can delete them if it was working. The delete end works. And this basically finishes the basic features for what this app does. We can add them, we can add modifiers, we see the expected value, and that's about it. If you have questions, again, feel free to ask. You can send them out into the Fuse Slack as well, and just address me on there, put the lat symbol at mort-ora-y, or you can send them on Twitter, and I can always go over bits that we've missed. And because unless this app becomes more complicated, I don't think I need to complicate the save system. Maybe I'll write an app that requires more extensive saving. And this save one uses the local disk, which all your apps are going to do. I mean, even if you have a client-side only app, you're saying like, look, everything's served in the server. It tends not to be true, because there's like little config options. You don't want everything stored in the server. You want to have at least some config options stored locally. And additionally, if you're trying to make a robust option, everything you send off to the server, you actually want to save locally first, because the internet's going to be a lot more flaky than is local save. And this is especially true in a mobile phone, where the person can walk 2 steps, they have no connection, walk another 2 steps, have a connection. And so actually what I'd like to see somebody build, and maybe I can build this, is that we really need a solution that queues up these things. Like all the stuff I said about what happens save multiple times, this timeout individual items, it's still a little bit of coding, and maybe I can start working on getting this to be a full system for actually saving, or I can make that to be a future show, how you actually make a robust saving system. And I mean, because even the other one here is that we directly overwrite the file. If we look down at the save here, we do a write text to file, and this just takes the new data and overwrites the old one. And even this, I mean, most people generally start to assume that this is safe. And if all you're storing is config options, this is safe. But if you had like a significantly relevant document, like something significant, because write the text file could be large and take time, you actually want to have a backup. You usually want to save to a new file, then delete the old one and create the new one. Some file systems will do this for you, but I highly doubt the ones in the phone are doing this. I can confirm this, but I highly doubt they're doing that. And so I think maybe it makes sense for us to actually write a robust saving system and or at least as a community supported project, and from JavaScript to show you, well, this is how you could actually do it. This is a robust saving system regardless of how the user left the app, how his phone crashed, whether you're doing network or not network. This is how to save stuff. But for this show and for this one right now, I think we have enough. We showed how all these things saved. We got rid of our debug panel. We can add and remove sets, the slider in and out. Design's not perfect here, the visuals here, but it works. And there are some more things we can do in DICE, but the next time I come back, I probably won't be serialization. What I'd like to do is I'd like to put a navigation on the bottom and have both this view of expected values and the second one where you can just quickly click the dice and get values, because I think that would be, I mean, I've seen some people use these apps. I personally just love picking up dice and rolling them when I play a game, so I wouldn't use it, but some people use it, and it's just a perfect excuse to add navigation to this app. And once we add navigation, we can go back to Allis's comment that we can actually add the one that when you press back on Android, that we also save it there. And there's lots of places to save. And that's about all I have for today, unless somebody had a question. And a bit shorter, but I was expecting the saving to take longer. It just didn't take very long. So that's all I have today. On Wednesday, I'm not entirely sure what I'll be doing on Wednesday. So if you have any suggestions before then, please get back to me. Otherwise, sign up to my Twitch channel to watch live, and also sign up to or follow me on Twitter, and you can watch my other comments, and I'll write articles about this, and I'll keep you informed about this. And I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll publish the dice again, and I'll put it in the comments where it is. And if you look at this, this is again using internal branches, but I think I'm not using anything that won't work on the current Fuse.js beta, or actually this might actually work with, this should work with the upcoming 1.6 as well, because there's nothing there I'm using new. And I have a whole bunch of branches compiled, as I always say, but there are a lot of features I just didn't use here, and we'll keep getting back to that. And I hope you enjoy the show, and then we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.